हेलो गाइस, वेलकम टू पाकिस्तानी रिएक्शन। तो कैसे हैं आप सब? मेरा नाम मुदस्सिर।
नाम मुबashir सुबह। आज की टाइटल है माय लाइफ लेसन फ्रॉम ट्रिप टू इंडिया। मतलब ये एक फॉरेनर भाई हैं, इनको इनकी लाइफ चेंज हो गई है इंडिया आकर। जब इन्होंने इंडिया की ट्रिप की तो इन्होंने अपना लेसन जो सीखा इंडिया से वो लोगों की तरफ शेयर किए। तो देखते हैं, इनकी वीडियो का लिंक मिल जाएगा डिस्क्रिप्शन में। प्लीज इनका चैनल लाजमी सब्सक्राइब कीजिएगा। कमेंट करते हैं जीरो एंड स्टार्ट।
Last year, I had
बहुत
the
लोगों की लाइफ
amazing
चेंज हुई है।
opportunity to spend 10 days with my friend and his family in his hometown of Ichilkaranji, which is 4 hours southeast of Pune. My best friend from childhood said, Ichilkaranji? That doesn't sound like a real place. But indeed it is. In fact, here it is on the map. Although I started this channel to share with other people the insights that I gleaned from my time in India, it's taken me a year to really process what happened inside of me and to articulate that externally. However, I finally feel ready to make this video, and so let me take you to the magical land they call India. So, the first big lesson that I learned from my time in India is be prepared. My friend wanted to brace me for the culture shock. Now, I thought, just push me into the deep end and I'll figure out how to swim, but he knew that I didn't know what I didn't know. After all, I wasn't exactly going for a tourist experience to ride an elephant to the Taj Mahal and take a selfie. No, I was going to the real, bona fide, middle of nowhere, no English speaking, no white people for days, middle of India. So my friend spent literally 3 years on and off preparing me for this trip. When we both still lived in Houston, he took me to Indian meditation groups. We went to Indian temples and festivals. And I had my first bites of delicious, authentic Indian curry. He also introduced me to some of my favorite Bollywood movies like Three Idiots and to the popular writer Chetan Bhagat, as well as more classical figures like the poet Tagore and the philosopher Krishnamurti. Now, I still had a ton of culture shock, but thank God my friend took the time to prepare me. Otherwise, I may have just lost my mind. So the second big insight I had from my time in India, I'll call baby on board. So the first night I was in India, I actually stayed in a swanky hotel inside of the Mumbai airport. We decided that Patrick would get pampered and coddled in a really nice atmosphere before he hit the open road of the Indian interstate the next morning. And as my friend drove me from the Mumbai airport to his childhood home, I got to see the real India. I took in scenes of people doing back-breaking work in fields, of children selling fruit by the side of the road, and of men being packed in sardines in the back of work trucks. I was feeling humbled and, to be frank, a little overwhelmed by the hard work that everyone was doing just to put food on the table. But then my eye caught a beautiful young woman, well dressed in a colorful sari, on the back of a motorcycle. My discomfort turned to joy and curiosity. I realized that the woman's husband was driving the motorcycle, she was sitting in the back, they were helmet free, and in between them, in that beautiful sari of hers, was a baby. My friend saw me freaking out and he smiled and just bobbed his head and said, Patrick, we're fine. They're fine. India's fine. We don't need help. They don't need saving. And one day at a time ever since, I've tried to remember that I don't need to save anyone, that everything is fine, that everyone is fine, even if it doesn't make sense to me. And I need to quit placing my judgments on other people and the way they live their life. Now, at this point, I still haven't arrived in Ichilkaranji, so we decided to stop at my friend's eldest sister home to have a delicious homemade meal. And as we enjoyed this dinner with all sorts of curries and chutneys and dal and rice and you name it, we had it. My friend's nephew asked, Patrick, if you're not married and you don't live with your parents, then who cooks your food? Well, I knew that in his family, eating out in restaurants was taboo and that generally the women cooked for their family. So I messed around with his expectations and I said, well, actually, my mom cooks food for me every day and she sends it first class from North Carolina to Norway. My friend's nephew bobbed and said, well, my mom used to courier me food from our home to my hostel every day, so it's possible. You just have to ask. It was an example of warm, playful ribbing at cultural differences with a family that truly loved and liked being around each other. I liked what I saw, and I liked what I tasted, and I wanted more. Little did I know that my life was changing and that I was having a spiritual experience alongside that semolina-based sweet dish with my friend and his family. And I think that's how spiritual growth happens. One conversation, one meal, one day at a time. The next lesson I'll call the giraffe in the hotel lobby. It's a nice day when you wake up in India, and on that first morning, I woke up to the sound of birds singing and saw women on the rooftop chanting their prayers as I went down to the hotel lobby to check my email. All of a sudden, one of the young hotel cleaners was standing right over me and staring at me. At first, I was a little taken aback, but then I realized that he was just being curious. After all, it's not every day that someone looking like me shows up in the middle of nowhere in India. It's kind of like a polar bear all of a sudden dropping down into the tropics. Over the next hour, he brought other members of the staff over to talk with me and take pictures, and in exchange, they cooked me the best breakfast I've ever had in my entire life. I brought color into their world, and they did the same for me. We were all totally engaged in our childlike creativity and curiosity, and we learned from each other and gave each other positive, zestful energy. And I think that's how people were meant to interact. We weren't made to get angry over differences. Instead, I think we were made to learn and even delight in our differences. Okay, the next story I have for you is about Rangoli. So that first morning as I left the hotel and went over to my friend's childhood home, I saw all the women in the village doing something on their front doorstep, and he explained to me that it's the ancient Indian art of Rangoli. As they carefully spread their colored powder onto the ground, the particular pattern that they were making was the mandala, which represents the human relationship to the infinite, unknowable spiritual realm that's all around us, yet it is so hard to remember and access on a daily basis. Their efforts would no doubt be swept away by the winds of the day. However, they were attending to their daily spiritual practice with the same tender, loving care as an artist preparing a painting to be immortalized in a museum. And each morning, they began their Rangoli again, just as diligently as the day before. While Rangoli might be the most visually appealing way to have a daily spiritual practice, seeing these women perform these beautiful acts of worship and devotion reminded me that I need to have my own daily practice. So ever since coming back from India, I have developed a very specific, intentional daily routine for myself that is my Rangoli. Now, perhaps one day I'll make a video about that daily routine, but for now, let's move on to the next story I have. Gratitude, not guilt. So in my work and my life, I often wax poetic about becoming who you truly are, which is the tagline of this channel. But in India, I saw people who were breaking their backs just to meet their daily needs. For example, as we traveled from my friend's hometown of Ichilkaranji to a sister's ashram in Goa, I was quite overwhelmed with what I perceived to be daily hardships of many people that I saw on the road. I watched women line up at community wells to fill up clay pots and carry them back home on their heads. From my comfortable car seat, I saw low-caste untouchables living in tents while they were harvesting sugarcane for just rupees a day. And as we neared a toll booth, I saw a sweat-drenched man selling strawberries in the middle of 8 lanes of traffic. My friend could tell that I was getting a bit emotionally riled up, and he said, "Patrick, guilt doesn't help anybody. Some of these people are way more happy than anyone you'd ever meet in America because they're grateful for what they have, which is their family. They have their values and their priorities in line. So don't look at their lives through the interpretation of American standards, because it's a whole different system here." I remembered that I was a guest in a foreign land, and so I should probably just listen to him and heed his advice. But what was I supposed to do with my guilt? How was I supposed to transform it? Well, I quickly filed through my emotional Rolodex, and I came to the one Hail Mary pass that never fails. And as I started to make a silent list of what I was grateful for, my mind shifted from a mindset of very closed, emotionally intense guilt to a more expansive realm of curiosity. And all of a sudden, I was asking my friend a million questions about how he could see the same situation that I was seeing, but in a different way. Guilt would have kept me locked into my existing frame of reference. But gratitude, on the other hand, expanded my understanding of the situation. So ever since my trip to India, I've tried to remember this moment. And anytime I'm feeling intense emotions that are sort of locking me down and skilling me into my own mindset, I try to practice gratitude and remember that when I can be grateful, curiosity arises, I expand, and I learn and grow.
इसी के साथ यार वीडियो खत्म। यार इन्होंने मतलब काफी कुछ सीखा, इसमें कोई शक नहीं है। अभी इंडिया डेवलपिंग कंट्री है।
देखो यार, हर
अभी
जगह अलग अलग
अभी
सिस्टम होता
इंडिया
है सारा।
डेवलपिंग
हाँ,
कंट्री है। अभी जो गांव शाव की है, ये जाहिर बात है एक छोटे से गांव की शायद बात कर रहे हैं,
बिल्कुल।
एक छोटे से टाउन की, तो वो एज कम्पेयर टू अदर के इतना नहीं होता इनका। पर्टिकुलरली उस गांव में एक मतलब जाना हुआ इनके
बिल्कुल।
दोस्त उस गांव का था, तो
बिल्कुल।
उधर गए, इन्होंने देखा है। जाहिर बात है इन्होंने बड़े शहर में जाते तो उधर वो बहुत जल्दी
बहुत
से
सिस्टम
ट्रांसफॉर्म
होता है
हो गए हैं,
वाकई में।
तो वो अलग चीज है। लेकिन इन्होंने काफी चीजें सीखी हैं,
देखो
किस
गांव
तरह
के,
लोग कम कमा रहे हैं, कम देखो कर रहे हैं, लेकिन वो खुश हैं। दूसरी बात उन्होंने ये देखा उधर पेरेंट्स जो है अपने बच्चों के लिए दाव
वही
पे
ना,
हर चीज
वो
लगा देते
वो
हैं।
देखो गांव
हाँ,
के लोगों का
हाँ,
रहन सहन, मतलब
हाँ,
गांव के लोगों का जिंदगी जीने का तरीका अलग होता
और
है।
उन्होंने
वो
बोला
सुबह उठते हैं, वो
हाँ,
मतलब बच्चों को जो
बच्चों के
माँ
लिए
भी
वो
काम
बहुत कुछ
करती है,
करते हैं।
देखो
हाँ,
माँ भी उधर गांव में काम
हाँ,
करती है, वो बच्चों को इसी तरह मतलब पीछे से वो चीज बांध
हाँ,
कर ले जाते हैं,
हाँ।
मतलब वो उधर काम करते हैं अपना, जो है ना घर वाले
और
का
दूसरी
काम
बात
बताते हैं।
इन्होंने भाई जो
हाँ,
बात नोटिस की है वो ये कि मतलब उधर जो फैमिलीज हैं वो एक दूसरे को बहुत सपोर्ट
बहुत
करती
सपोर्ट करती
है
है
एज
वाकई
कम्पेयर टू
में।
अमेरिका। उधर
अब
उन अमेरिकन के लिए ये चीज बहुत नहीं है।
नहीं
उधर
है,
क्या
नहीं
होता
है।
है 16 साल 17 साल का बच्चा होता है तो वो निकल जाता है अपना, वो
आप भाई
उसको
थप्पड़ नहीं मार
पेरेंट्स भी
सकते।
उधर नहीं नहीं उधर पेरेंट्स भी कह देते हैं कि भाई तू मतलब अपना देख इस तरह।
भाई
हाँ,
ये भी है,
हाँ,
उधर मैं कहता हूँ कि पेरेंट्स जो है ना अपने बच्चों को थप्पड़ नहीं मार सकते,
हाँ।
वो पुलिस बुला लेते हैं
मुझे
कि भाई
पता
मैं हम बड़े हो
वो
गए।
ये सारा है,
ये सिस्टम हो
वो
जाता
अलग
है।
चीज है यार,
वो
थप्पड़
रंगोली
मारे ना
उन्होंने
मारे।
देखी, फिर उन्होंने
हाँ,
सारा कुछ देखा, रंगोली
तो
वाला
काफी
सिस्टम
चीजें
देखा,
उन्होंने
सारा कुछ
सीखी
देखा।
भारतीय कल्चर
हाँ,
से, और ये
वाकई में।
अपना एक एक्सपीरियंस शेयर कर रहे हैं। आपका कैसे सारी वीडियो पे क्या कहना है अपने कमेंट सेक्शन में दें। अपना बहुत ज्यादा ख्याल रखिएगा तो यार।